People often think they can measure a human being in a single glance, as if worth can be calculated from fabric quality, posture, accent, or the shine on someone's shoes. In the marble-floored lobby of Arden Tower, that quiet judgment happened every day, flowing silently between the glass walls and polished chrome like central air, unseen, constant, and cold. Executives strode through the revolving doors wrapped in tailored suits and self-importance, heels clicking with the confidence of people who believed they owned not just the building but the air inside it. And every morning before sunrise, before their perfumes and power ties arrived, Mira was already there, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, hands inside yellow gloves that smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and hard work. She moved with the careful rhythm of someone who knew that mistakes cost more for people like her. Each swipe of the mop was precise, each trash bin emptied without noise, each desk wiped as if she were polishing something sacred. No one noticed the way she memorized the layout of offices, the security patterns, the names on frosted glass doors. To them, she was background like the hum of fluorescent lights. When they did notice her, it was usually with a wrinkle of the nose or a distracted wave, the kind you give a fly that hasn't quite landed yet. Mira understood invisibility better than most. She had grown up in rooms where adults spoke over her, where teachers mispronounced her name and never corrected themselves, where opportunity always seemed to arrive one street away and never turn the corner. She learned early that silence lets you hear things other people miss. While scrubbing conference room tables, she absorbed fragments of conversations about mergers, layoffs, whispered scandals, numbers that made her head spin. She didn't understand everything at first, but she understood tone, the nervous laugh, the forced confidence, the way people's voices drop when they know they're skating on thin ice. One Tuesday afternoon, long after lunch meetings had left rings of coffee and crumbs of catered sandwiches, 3 senior managers stood near the reception desk arguing in hushed, urgent tones. Mira knelt nearby, gathering trash, eyes down. "If compliance sees those reports, we're finished," one muttered. Another laughed too loudly. "Relax. By the time anyone notices, we'll be in different positions." Their shoes were Italian leather. Her knees ached on tile. None of them imagined the cleaner understood enough English, enough context, enough of anything to matter. But Mira had once studied accounting before life pulled her out of school and into survival. Numbers were a language she never forgot. That night, as she wiped fingerprints from a glass wall, she thought about the spreadsheets she had glimpsed left open, the discrepancies she'd noticed between printed reports tossed in trash and figures mentioned in meetings. Patterns formed in her mind, the way puzzle pieces click when turned the right way. Days later, the incident happened that sealed everything. A group of executives were touring the floor with a visiting investor, laughter echoing, confidence on display. Mira was on her hands and knees near the window, removing a stubborn stain. One man, smiling for his audience, joked about cleaning up messes and tipped the dregs of his espresso onto the floor beside her. Brown liquid spread like an insult given physical form. A few people chuckled. Someone said, "That's job security, right?" Mira looked up only once, not with anger, not with tears. Just a long, steady look that made one of the younger assistants shift uncomfortably. Humiliation is a strange fuel. It burns slow, deep, and clean if you let it. That night, instead of going straight home, Mira sat in the small public library 2 bus rides away. She used a computer that hummed like it was tired of being alive. She searched regulations, reporting channels, whistleblower protections. Her hands trembled not from fear of being wrong, but from the weight of being right. Over the next week, she documented everything she could without drawing attention. Dates, names, times, copies of discarded drafts she had legally retrieved from trash bins before shredding time. She cross-referenced what she remembered from conversations with what she found online. The picture sharpened. Financial misreporting, concealed losses, decisions that could collapse not just careers but pensions of people who had trusted the company with their futures. Still, she hesitated. People like Mira were taught that stepping forward often means being stepped on. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw that coffee spreading across clean marble, heard laughter bouncing off glass, felt the quiet assumption that she was too small to matter. When she finally submitted the report through an official channel, she did it from a cafe Wi-Fi connection, heart pounding so hard she thought others could hear. Then she went back to work the next morning as if nothing had changed, pushing her cart, nodding politely, invisible as ever. What she didn't see, what she couldn't see, was the chain reaction already unfolding in offices she cleaned at night. Emails marked urgent. Compliance officers flown in. Doors closed for private meetings. The same voices that once boomed with easy authority now carried tight edges, sentences cut short, laughter gone missing. Mira wiped a conference table while two executives argued inside, not realizing the quiet woman outside the glass was the reason their world was tilting. People kept walking past her without eye contact, still measuring worth in suits and titles, unaware that the balance of power had already shifted beneath their polished shoes, unaware that the person they dismissed as background had become the axis on which their futures were beginning to turn, unaware that the smallest, quietest presence in the room had been watching, learning, remembering, and slowly, patiently moving pieces into place while they were busy believing the surface of things was the whole truth, while they were busy mistaking silence for ignorance and humility for weakness and worn shoes for an empty mind, while Mira continued down the hallway with her cart, the wheels squeaking softly, the sound almost lost under the growing tension in the air. The kind of tension that comes before glass cracks, before structures that looked permanent reveal the fractures that were always there, hairline and hidden, waiting for the slightest pressure in the right place to make everything give way. Power rarely announces when it is about to change hands. It doesn't send invitations or warnings. It shifts quietly, like weight moving beneath the floorboards, like a tide turning in the dark while everyone sleeps, confident the shoreline will look the same in the morning. Inside Calder and Rowe Corporation, power had always worn the same uniform, tailored suits, polished voices, expensive watches that flashed under boardroom lights. It lived on the top floors, behind glass walls and doors that opened with silent keycards, in offices that smelled of leather and roasted coffee. Down below, where the hum of machines and the scent of disinfectant lingered, power was something people cleaned around, not something they were ever meant to hold. Jonas believed in power the way some people believe in gravity, constant, unquestionable, his by default. As head of regional operations, he had spent 15 years climbing, stepping neatly over anyone too slow or too soft to keep up. He spoke in bullet points, shook hands without warmth, and treated kindness like a business expense with no return. When he walked through the office, conversations straightened, screens minimized, spines stiffened. He liked that effect. It proved the system worked. On the evening, everything began to tilt. Jonas stood in conference room C with two other senior leaders, reviewing projections that didn't add up. Red numbers hid beneath confident language, risks buried under optimism. "We just need one more quarter," someone said, voice tight. "After the acquisition closes, it'll balance." Jonas nodded, not because he believed it, but because belief was less important than appearance. Appear certain, and others will follow. That had always been the rule. Outside the glass walls, Lila wiped fingerprints from the metal frame of the door. She moved slowly, deliberately, eyes lowered. Most people in the building didn't know her name. To them she was cleaning, maintenance, or simply nothing at all. But Lila noticed things. She noticed how often meetings ran late on the executive floor. She noticed the shredded papers that sometimes weren't shredded enough. She noticed the tremor in voices that once carried easy confidence. Weeks earlier, she had nearly been fired for lingering. A manager had complained that she paused too long near workstations, as if observation itself were suspicious. No one asked why she paused. To read labels, to remember where cables went so she wouldn't unplug anything important, to make sure she left each space exactly as she found it. Her supervisor warned her gently, "Keep your head down, don't give them reasons." Lila nodded. She had spent her whole life not giving reasons. The night Jonas brushed past her in the hallway without seeing her, he was rehearsing a speech in his head, something about resilience and forward momentum. His shoulder clipped her cart, nearly tipping a bucket. He didn't apologize. He didn't even register the near spill. Lila steadied the handle, watched him go, and felt something inside her settle. Not anger exactly, but clarity. Some people walked through the world assuming it would move aside. The shift began with an email sent from an address no one recognized, routed through official channels that could not be ignored. It contained attachments, documents, comparisons, internal reports alongside filed statements, numbers that refused to align no matter how generously they were interpreted. The subject line was calm, almost polite. The content was not. Compliance flagged it within minutes. Legal was called before lunch. By afternoon, doors that were usually open stood closed. Jonas first heard about it in fragments. Inquiry. Irregularities. Internal source. He dismissed it at first. Companies of their size dealt with probes all the time. Noise. But the noise didn't fade, it sharpened. Meetings multiplied. External auditors appeared, carrying neutral expressions and too many questions. Access permissions changed. Data pulls were logged. Someone from headquarters arrived without advance notice. On the lower floors, nothing seemed different. Phones rang, printers jammed. Lila cleaned around legs of desks, while employees speculated in whispers. She kept her face blank, movements steady. Inside, her heart beat with a rhythm that matched the quiet unfolding upstairs. She had not acted out of revenge, though some nights the memory of being spoken over, waved away, or treated like a smudge on glass still burned. She had acted because the numbers were wrong, because pensions and salaries and futures were tied to decisions made by people who thought consequences belonged to someone else. Power, she was learning, often rests on the assumption that no one beneath you is watching closely enough to matter. Jonas was called into a review meeting on a Thursday that felt too bright. Sunlight poured through windows, indifferent. Around the table sat faces he didn't usually answer to. Their questions were precise. When had he first seen these projections? Why were discrepancies not escalated? Who approved the language in shareholder updates? He responded smoothly at first, muscle memory guiding him. But each answer seemed to open another door, another document, another contradiction. He left the room with a dryness in his mouth he couldn't swallow away. In the hallway he passed Lila, who was kneeling to scrub a mark from the baseboard. For a flicker of a second he noticed her, not as an obstacle, but as a person. Sweat beaded at her temple. Her gloves were worn at the fingertips. Their eyes met, and he looked away first, unsettled by something he couldn't name. Investigations move like winter, slow, then all at once. Systems were audited, decisions retraced, emails resurfaced from archives. People who once spoke with certainty now said, "I don't recall," and that wasn't my department. Responsibility thinned as it rose like air at high altitude. Lila watched the change in body language. Shoulders that once squared now curved inward. Laughter in corridors turned brittle, then rare. Security badges were checked more often. One afternoon she saw a director leave with a cardboard box, eyes fixed ahead. The building hummed with a new frequency. Fear threaded through routine. She did not feel triumph, mostly she felt tired. Power shifting is not a clean process. It grinds, it exposes. It pulls people who never made the decisions into the blast radius of those who did. She worried about the receptionist with 2 kids, the junior analyst paying off loans, the guard who always greeted her by name. She hoped the correction would be precise, not careless. Jonas stopped sleeping well. At night, he replayed meetings, searching for the moment he could have steered differently, but ambition had its own momentum. Each compromise once felt small, temporary, necessary. No one decision seemed catastrophic alone. Together they formed a structure now collapsing under its own weight. The announcement came on a Monday morning. Internal memo, leadership changes pending review outcomes, commitments to transparency, words chosen to sound firm yet controlled, names listed, Jonas's among them, on administrative leave. He read it twice, as if a second pass might alter the letters. When he returned to his office to gather personal items, the room looked unfamiliar, like a hotel after checkout. The framed certificate, the awards, the carefully curated bookshelf, props, suddenly. In the hallway, employees avoided his gaze, the same way they once avoided Lila's for different reasons. He felt the strange lightness of someone untethered from a role he thought was himself. Near the elevators, Lila was emptying a trash bin. A crumpled draft of a speech sat on top. She smoothed it unconsciously before tossing it into the bag. Jonas hesitated, then spoke, voice rougher than he expected. "What's your name?" The question sounded inadequate even as he asked it. She looked up. "Lila." He nodded as if committing it to memory could repair something already broken. The elevator arrived, doors opened. He stepped inside, one more person moving through a system that no longer bent around him. Upstairs, interim leaders met to rebuild trust, to design controls, to promise a culture shift. Downstairs, Lila replaced the trash liner and moved on to the next office, cartwheels whispering over tile. The building stood the same against the skyline, glass catching sunlight, reflecting clouds as if nothing inside had changed. But beneath the surface, authority had fractured and reformed, redistributed by actions no one powerful had bothered to notice until it was too late, by a voice they never thought to hear, by the simple, steady insistence that truth does not care about titles, that consequences do not check org charts, that the direction of force can reverse without spectacle, without warning. While people are busy assuming tomorrow will look exactly like yesterday, while footsteps echo in corridors that suddenly feel longer, while hands that once signed orders now sit empty on polished desks, while someone in worn gloves pushes a cart forward at the same measured pace, past doors with new names, past rooms where decisions are made more carefully now, past windows reflecting a city that never pauses, carrying with her the quiet knowledge of how easily the balance can tip, how silently the ground can move, how the center of gravity in any room is never as fixed as it seems, never as permanent, as those standing at the top like to believe.